George Smith Patton Jr. was born on November 11, 1985, in San Gabriel, California, a quiet suburb near Los Angeles. His family came from considerable wealth, holding about 128 acres of land in what is now San Marino. Surrounded by tales of knights, cavalry charges, and heroic ancestors, young George's imagination thrived on stories of martial valor. Even as a child, he found reading and writing challenging. He was homeschooled until age 11, then enrolled in a private school in Pasadena, where his stubborn determination helped him overcome those early struggles. Patton's deep fascination with history and military exploits grew each time he heard stories about past warriors, including legendary generals like Napoleon Bonaparte and Joan of Arc. He firmly believed in reincarnation and often declared that he might have been a soldier in previous lives. This conviction would shape much of his personal mythology as he grew older. By his late teens, Patton was obsessed with the idea of joining the military. In 1903, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather, he attended the Virginia Military Institute for a year. He excelled in drill, but had difficulties with academics. Determined to rise above these challenges, he secured an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Although his first year there was rocky, particularly with math, he persevered, eventually adjusting to West Point's rigid discipline. Patton graduated in 1909, earning a commission as a second lieutenant in the cavalry branch. Early military career and the Pancho Villa expedition. Shortly after graduation, Patton received his first assignment at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, where he quickly gained a reputation for intensity and a keen attention to detail. Before long, he transferred to Fort Myer in Virginia, a central hub for the Army's senior leadership. Patton's obsession with precision extended even to his personal gear. He once accidentally discharged a pistol while wearing it in his belt instead of a holster. This embarrassing mishap led him to adopt the ivory-handled revolver that would later become iconic. By 1912, Patton had competed in the modern pentathlon at the Stockholm Olympics. Shooting controversies aside, he fired a larger caliber pistol than most. He finished an impressive 5th overall and was the highest-ranking non-Swedish competitor. Afterward, Patton studied fencing in France, adopting thrusting techniques and designing the M1913 cavalry saber, commonly known as the Patton saber. In 1916, Patton, now a first lieutenant, served as aide to General John J. Pershing during the Mexican expedition against the revolutionary Pancho Villa. Patton's eagerness for action led him to command one of the Army's first motorized raids. During that operation, he confronted and helped eliminate several of Villa's men. The press labeled him a bandit killer, and his daring nature caught Pershing's eye, setting a pattern of recognition for aggressive field leadership that would echo throughout Patton's career. World War I and the birth of tank warfare. Once the United States joined World War I in April 1917, Patton, promoted to captain, followed General Pershing to France with the American Expeditionary Forces. Initially assigned to train troops, Patton grew fascinated by the new concept of armored warfare. He sought permission to create a light tank school, which he did successfully, championing the use of French-built Renault FT tanks. In 1918, Patton assumed command of the American 1st Provisional Tank Brigade. His style was often hands-on. He led from the front, at times riding on top of the tanks to encourage his troops. On September 26, 1918, Patton was wounded while rallying disoriented infantry and organizing a tank advance near Chepi. Though the bullet that struck him left a serious wound, he refused evacuation until he had set up a proper command handover. Recognized for his bravery, Patton received the Distinguished Service Cross, illustrating the gallantry that would become his hallmark. After World War I ended on November 11, 1918, coincidentally Patton's 33rd birthday, he struggled with the quiet transition to peacetime. Having witnessed the horrors of trench warfare, he felt a strong urgency to modernize U.S. forces, convinced that tanks were the future of land combat. Despite the Army's limited resources, Patton's passion for armored strategy never wavered. The interwar years, transforming a vision. Patton returned home, reverting from his temporary wartime rank back to his permanent rank of captain before being promoted to major. Stationed at various posts, he honed his tactical theories, insisting that armored units needed speed, shock, and the freedom to strike deep into enemy lines. His forward-thinking approach challenged many traditionalists who still viewed the tank as mere infantry support. During these years, Patton formed a notable friendship with Dwight D. Eisenhower, another young officer who shared an interest in mechanized warfare. Though both men rose through different paths, they frequently exchanged ideas on developing tank tactics, shaping the future of U.S. military doctrine. Patton also spent time at the Command and General Staff College and the Army War College, polishing his strategic knowledge. Though no major conflicts erupted for the United States in the late 1920s and early 1930s, Patton's life was hardly uneventful. He was involved in the controversial clearing of the Bonus Army protest in 1932. The confrontation tested his sense of loyalty to senior leadership, even when he personally empathized with the World War I veterans protesting in Washington. Despite occasional personal missteps, Patton never stopped advocating for a strong, swiftly moving armor force, an idea that saw limited acceptance at first, but eventually gained traction as global tensions rose. Prelude to World War II. With Adolf Hitler's Germany invading Poland in 1939, war was clearly on the horizon. The U.S. Army began mobilizing, though not at the same scale as the European powers. Patton seized this moment to showcase large-scale armored maneuvers in the southern United States. These exercises demonstrated the potential of concentrated tank forces, garnering significant attention from military leaders. By 1940, Patton had achieved the rank of Brigadier General, and within a year, he was a Major General, commanding the 2nd Armored Division. He led exhaustive training, turning the desert areas of California into proving grounds where soldiers learned to handle harsh conditions, extended supply lines, and the complexities of rapid movement across large expanses. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States formally entered World War II, and Patton's long-held belief in the necessity of a ready modern army was vindicated. North Africa Campaign, Operation Torch, and the rise of a legend. In November 1942, Allied forces launched Operation Torch, a major amphibious landing in French North Africa. Patton commanded the Western Task Force, consisting of about 33,000 troops. After securing landings near Casablanca, Patton negotiated an armistice with local Vichy French forces, earning the Order of Wissam Alaouite from Morocco's Sultan. Patton's leadership style was dramatic. He enforced strict discipline, clean uniforms, punctuality, and impeccable ceremonies. But even more important was his flair for turning a discouraged force into a formidable one. In March 1943, when the U.S. Toothed Corps faltered at Kasserine Pass, Patton replaced its previous commander and immediately imposed orders designed to restore morale and efficiency. He expected results and was prepared to enforce them at all costs. Under his command, the II Corps reclaimed significant ground, but tensions arose with Allied air commanders who questioned Patton's relentless criticism of close air support. Patton eventually turned over command of II Corps to his deputy, Omar Bradley, so Patton could concentrate on planning the invasion of Sicily. His success in North Africa had catapulted him into the spotlight, although it also earned him a reputation for being harsh and uncompromising. Sicily Campaign. Triumph and controversy. In July 1943, Patton led the newly created 7th Army in Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily. The plan initially placed British General Bernard Montgomery's 8th Army in a leading role, with Patton providing flank support. However, when progress slowed, Patton secured permission to advance on Palermo, capturing it in a rapid campaign that showcased the audacity of armored strikes. He continued toward Messina, determined that his troops would arrive before Montgomery's. While the capture of Messina was an Allied success, the campaign was marred by incidents that revealed Patton's complex persona. Reports circulated of Patton shooting 2 mules blocking a bridge and pushing their cart off into a ravine. More damaging were the infamous slapping incidents, in which Patton struck 2 soldiers diagnosed with combat fatigue, berating them for cowardice. General Eisenhower reprimanded Patton and insisted he apologize. Although the press initially kept the story quiet, it eventually leaked, creating public uproar and raising calls for Patton's dismissal. Despite this storm, military leaders like Eisenhower believed Patton's talents were too vital to lose. He was quietly sidelined from combat command for about 11 months, training troops in England. Meanwhile, a new role emerged for him in an elaborate deception plan that would help mask the true invasion target for D-Day. Operation Fortitude and the Normandy breakout. German intelligence viewed Patton as the Allies' top field commander, so the Allies exploited this perception. Operation Fortitude involved creating a fictitious 1st United States Army group under Patton's command. Fake radio chatter, rubber tanks, and dummy installations convinced the Germans that Patton would lead an invasion at Pas-de-Calais, prompting them to hold vital divisions away from Normandy. On June 6, 1944 D-Day, Allied forces landed in Normandy, catching the Germans off guard. Patton's actual contribution would come later, as he assumed command of the Third Army on August 1, 1944. Known for aggressive tactics, Patton's Third Army launched a swift advance across northern France, achieving dramatic breakthroughs. A hallmark of his approach was reconnaissance by fire, where tanks and armored infantry moved rapidly, firing at likely enemy positions to flush out ambushes. By late August, the Third Army had liberated vast stretches of French territory, capturing thousands of Axis prisoners and destroying critical enemy formations. However, Patton's momentum faltered at the Moselle River when supply shortages forced him to pause. High Command had chosen to prioritize other Allied advances, leaving Patton's divisions low on fuel and ammunition. This logistic crunch signaled a shift in the war's pace, yet Patton continued to push whenever possible, eventually participating in the Allied drive toward the German border. The Lorraine Campaign and the Battle of the Bulge. Tasked with seizing the Lorraine region in eastern France, Patton's Third Army found itself bogged down by well-defended positions and thick fortifications around Metz. Weeks of grueling combat led to a drawn-out siege that only ended in November 1944. Critics later argued that Patton might have bypassed the fortress, though circumstances made a perfect flanking maneuver difficult. Allied fortunes shifted dramatically in December 1944 when German forces launched a massive surprise offensive in the Ardennes, known as the Battle of the Bulge. Under Eisenhower's direction, Patton turned the Third Army north in a sweeping maneuver to relieve the besieged town of Bastogne. Responding to urgent orders, he managed to pivot 6 divisions in only a few days, an astonishing logistical feat. On December 26, the Third Army reached Bastogne, breaking the siege. Patton praised his troops' performance, hailing this sudden reversal as one of the war's greatest tactical achievements. By early 1945, the Germans were in retreat. Patton continued to push across the Rhine, capturing cities such as Trier and Mainz. At one point, he joked with higher command about whether to give Trier back after being told it would take 4 divisions to seize it, but his forces had already entered the city using only 2. This mischievous wit highlighted his disdain for bureaucratic hesitations, victories, controversies, and the end of the war. In the spring of 1945, Patton's units surged into Germany. He aimed to liberate prisoners of war, but made a miscalculated attempt in sending task force bomb deep behind enemy lines to free his son-in-law. That mission failed, resulting in heavy losses. Nonetheless, the Third Army's offensive accomplishments were staggering. By May, Germany capitulated. After the war ended in Europe, Patton longed to join the Pacific Theater. However, he was appointed military governor of Bavaria instead, leading denazification efforts. Yet Patton's impatience with political tasks and his outspoken nature drew negative attention. He compared removing former Nazis from office to dismissing members of American political parties, remarks that angered Eisenhower. Patton's relationship with displaced persons, particularly Jewish Holocaust survivors, also sparked controversy. After visiting a camp, he wrote offensive statements in his diary, calling the inmates names and making anti-Semitic remarks. This attitude, combined with publicly questioning the wisdom of denazification, prompted Eisenhower to relieve him from command of the Third Army. In October 1945, Patton was given command of the 15th Army, a mostly administrative post focused on compiling a history of the war in Europe. Fatal accident and death. On December 9, 1945, Patton set out on a pheasant hunt near Speyer, Germany, hoping to lift his mood. During the trip, a low-speed collision occurred when his Cadillac limousine hit an Army truck. General Patton was gravely injured, suffering a broken neck that left him paralyzed from the neck down. Though others in the vehicle escaped with minor injuries, Patton knew his condition was dire. He died on December 21, 1945, at a hospital in Heidelberg, just 12 days after the accident. True to his wishes, he was buried in Luxembourg American Cemetery among the men who had served under him. His death came at a time when the post-war world was rapidly transforming, and Patton, forever the warrior, left this life in a moment of sorrow and reflection. Legacy and influence. George S. Patton remains one of the most recognized American generals, in part due to his larger-than-life persona. From his ivory-handled revolvers to his flamboyant speeches laced with profanity, he projected an image of restless aggression. That style, combined with a genuine compassion for his troops' well-being, earned him both loyalty and controversy. Many historians compare his success with that of legendary battlefield commanders. German generals, including Erwin Rommel, reportedly respected Patton's swift armored drives, calling him a master of mobile warfare. But he was also prone to political blunders and interpersonal conflicts, especially when he clashed with peers like Omar Bradley. Despite these flaws, Patton's emphasis on speed, coordination, and relentless offensive action left an indelible mark on modern military doctrine. His approach to tank warfare, focusing on breakthrough and exploitation rather than merely assisting infantry, influenced U.S. Army tactics for decades. Subsequent American tanks like the M46 Patton even bore his name, a tribute to his leadership in armored operations. Films, documentaries, and novels have fueled public fascination with Patton's life. The 1970 movie, titled Patton, starring George C. Scott, immortalized many of his mannerisms and speeches, introducing a new generation to the general's vivid style. Today, Patton stands as a testament to the potent blend of charisma, skill, and occasional recklessness that can define a wartime leader. Although his outspoken opinions on race, politics, and diplomacy tarnish aspects of his legacy, few question his passion for commanding troops or his lasting impact on military history. George S. Patton's story reminds us how even the most audacious dreams can become reality with unyielding resolve. He revolutionized tank warfare, commanded soldiers through the deserts of North Africa and the fields of Lorraine, and left an imprint on some of the toughest battles of World War II. Yet beyond the battlefield triumphs, his life reflects the turbulence of a man caught between his warrior spirit and his own moral flaws. Join our journey into untold history by exploring more hidden facets of World War II. Subscribe to stay with us on this quest for deeper insight. And if you were intrigued by Patton's unwavering determination, share this story with a fellow history lover who cherishes the great sagas that shaped our modern world.